And the elementary, not
All right, guys. So yesterday you had a video lesson to watch. There's 99 views. Not bad. Okay, 99 views. So maybe everybody got to watch it.
I like it, and I didn't.
Okay. All right. So describe Napoleon's aim of the Continental System. Yesterday we talked about, well, I did over the video lesson, the accomplishments of Napoleon. Okay, and leading into these Napoleonic wars. So we left off talking about the Continental System and nationalism. Okay, so nationalism is important to remember as we're going to be moving forward when we get closer to World War I, and that's going to be one of the causes leading into the Great War. So there you go. There you go. I'll let you guys work on this. We'll review it, go over it. We're going to finish the notes today. So my goal is to have the study guide out by the end of the class period today. Hopefully like 5 minutes. That'll be great.
Very great.
Try to finish it before that, so then you guys can get a little bit of a head start on it. And then Monday, we'll have a review. Tuesday, test. Wednesday, I'll just leave that open, and we'll review the exam, and that's probably going to be it. Probably after that, and whoever has to take the exam as it gets out Tuesday. Sound good? Cool. Cool. What's up?
We really only have to win one of those matches. Like from
Through that stretch?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
For real. The only- We should want to. And ouch.
Yep. It happens, man.
Ouch.
You get working on this? Recorded.
I'll do practice.
Recorded.
I forgot about it. The recording in progress.
So how many bell ringers do we have for this week? 5?
We start.
Monday? I think it was
What the
Monday.
date?
The 12th?
I think we have 5.
I was gonna say, I think it should be 5. Only 4? Maybe we only had 4. I don't know.
Oh.
Is there 4? Oh, I was gonna say, jeez, man. All right, okay, so before we get into this, yesterday I talked a little bit more about Napoleon's rise to power. Okay, I also mentioned a little bit about his love life. Why was that important? Why was that important? Paul, go ahead.
Because he divorced with tried to marry.
Yeah, poor Josephine, right? And married with love, and she was getting a little bit older, male heir to the throne is kind of out of the picture. And why else did he divorce her? Who did he marry?
I don't know her name, but she tried to marry, I forget, it was also, yeah,
Yeah,
because he wanted to,
Austria.
like, gain the favor, like, ally.
Yeah, good job. So we talked quite a bit about these Napoleonic wars already, right? We mentioned about how France was already in war with Prussia, Austria, Great Britain throughout this revolution. And there's a lot of hostility, a lot of anarchy internally within France. And at the same time, now they're duking it out with external forces. So it's one of those things where he wanted to try to build an ally. What better way than marrying into the family of the Austrian kingdom? So he marries Marie-Louise, and this is building this relationship, this alliance, literally with Austria.
What?
This relationship.
Oh, the other one, they did that a lot.
Alliance.
It came out weird when you said he said, oh, good chance.
All right, so anyway, with that, okay, this is building this alliance with Austria and France, and this is going to benefit France with this really taking over the whole continent of Europe. So with that, we talked a little bit about the Continental System. So what was the Continental System? What was that? This is going to lead into ultimately the downfall of Napoleon and France. But what we got? Why? Go ahead.
The trade embargo of Britain.
Yeah, good job. So this was a way to try to constrict the resources, materials, the wealth coming into Great Britain. Right? We know Great Britain is a what? What is it? An island. Yeah, good job. So they're limited to what resources they have there. That's why they were so dependent on their territorial possessions all around the world. Yeah, like I mentioned, when it came to Great Britain, they had the strongest navy. They had really the largest expansion in imperialism, okay, which we'll talk more about here next chapter, than any other European country. And they're dependent on these resources. Why? They're an island nation. So all these other European countries were dependent on their trade. Okay, they needed these resources. They needed these materials. And with Napoleon rising to power, and France being the strongest land power, well, he thought they could just bully around all these other European countries to a point where he could defeat one of his biggest rivals, Great Britain, by just cutting off the trade with Great Britain and these other European countries. So this continental system was a way to try to blockade and to try to prevent any of these European countries from trading with Great Britain. So if that trade is eliminated, that market is eliminated for Great Britain, well, that's going to weaken their economy to a point where they're not going to be able to afford to continue to fight and last these costly wars with France. So overall, this was a smart idea. This was a great idea, but ultimately it will lead to his downfall. One reason why is because Great Britain has a strong navy. Right? They're just going to continue to trade with these other European countries, and this is going to push these countries to break away from this continental system. One being in particular, which we're going to talk about a little bit more today, is Spain and even Russia. So that's going to put Napoleon into a two-front war and battling these armies all across Europe, really just all by himself. All right, so what about accomplishments? Yesterday I went over a slide of accomplishments. So what ones did you guys write down here? Chris, go ahead.
He had the British Empire.
Yeah, good job. So when you look at mainland Europe, he pretty much dominated all. He took over all of continental Europe, obviously except for Great Britain and even Russia. Right? He marched all the way to Moscow, which we'll talk more about today, leading to his downfall. Okay, so when you're looking at Europe, it was controlled really all by France. So when you compare it to Rome, right, he built the largest empire that we've seen since ancient Rome. All right, good. What else? Paul.
I started a secondary school. I don't know how to pronounce it, but
Lycée. Yeah, okay.
Education was very important.
Awesome, good job. So we talked about these enlightened absolute monarchs already with Frederick the Great, with Prussia, okay, with Napoleon in France. He thought and emphasized a lot with education. The reason for it is because, well, that's your future. That's going to be expanding your country from here on in, right? And when it comes to innovations, when it comes to military strategies and planning, it's important to have your youth, your younger generations adapted for this progression, for this growth. So yeah, that's very important when it comes to public education. Okay, this wasn't really seen before until this French Revolution, right, in Europe. So that's important. Good. Why?
He sold the Louisiana territory to the U.S. for $15 million.
All right, yeah, good job. So one of the biggest issues for France after the French and Indian War, the American Revolution, right? Because they're helping with these conflicts, they're putting a lot of money and effort into it. Well, it was to a point where it was breaking the bank. So rather than just raising taxes, well, he thought of a different way. Why don't we just give up some of these territories? Yeah, they're losing resources, they're losing materials. But at the same time, America kind of owed France a lot of money when it came to some of these war debts. So he thought, well, we're going to pay in this case that with that already, so why not just sell off this chunk of land, okay, to America? And with that, we know the United States is going to double their size, and it's going to build the United States into a strong alliance, a strong ally in the future. And that's probably what Napoleon was seeing with this. He thought, well, if we just sell off this territory with America, sooner or later, if we come into a conflict, maybe we'll drag them in on our side. Which when we get to World War I and World War II, that's exactly what happens. Paul. Yeah, good job. So we talked about the Napoleonic Code. Good job. So when it comes to written set of laws, freedoms, and liberties, it's provided to the people. So in other words, this is like a constitution for the people. All right, equality for all men, right? Unfortunately, women didn't receive these equalities, these opportunities. So that's one negative of this Napoleonic Code. But it did bring structure, it did bring stability, which a lot of these other European countries, as they're adapting after these Napoleonic Wars and progressing, they're going to adopt something very similar as their kind of constitution. Okay, anything else? Anything else? All right, Connor, go ahead. Yeah, good. So we talked a little bit about Catholicism, and with Napoleon bringing this back, we mentioned about the Jacobins trying to destroy this because this was a sign of power of the old monarch. So for Napoleon, he realized that this is a great institution, a great system to try to bring order and also at the same time bring a good moral background and ethics to the French people. And yeah, there's still a strong alliance of the people with the Catholic Church. So overall, when it comes to a structure in society, a system in society, religion provides that. So he brings us back. Well, one thing to note with Napoleon and the Pope, what did he do? What was that symbol of power that he tried to show in the Catholic Church? Paul?
He did it with the Pope crown. I mean, took the crown out of him.
Yeah, good job. So this was a symbol of showing that, hey, we're not going to return back to this old system of power where the Catholic Church is reigning above the emperor, reigning above, let's say, a leader of France. He takes the crown right from the Pope and crowns himself. So showing that he is this ultimate power and that they're not going to return to these old ways. All right, Wyatt, what's up?
Did you look at that over?
No, I did not. All right, guys, here are your terms for today. We're going to finish up the terms. I'm going to put an assignment out there so you can just post them right away. Okay, I will grade the bell ringers while you're working on the terms. Does that work? Yeah, okay, let's just do that.
Was it on purpose that you didn't look at it? You just forget?
I was pretty busy yesterday making the test. Yeah, there you go. All right, so there you go. Those are the last of the terms for this chapter. You can just post them once you're finished and when I publish the assignment. I am going to come around and check your bell ringers though, so have those out. Should have 5 for this week. I can get that graded for you too. Good job. The bell ringers. Okay, good. What's that? All right, so we will go over these terms here through the presentation. I just want to get through this for you guys, and then maybe give you a little bit of time to work here on your study guide. So real quick, the one term I do want to go over, because this is going to be repeated when we get to World War I and World War II, nationalism. What does nationalism mean? All right, Wyatt, go ahead.
When the people are really patriotic about the country.
Yeah, good job. So, and a really high intensity when it comes to their national pride with their own country. Good job. So a strong sense of national pride. So patriotism, in other words. And this is going to be fueled during the Napoleonic Wars and even after, to a point that's going to push these countries in Europe to have bitter rivalries with one another, leading up into World War I. So we will talk, right, about other wars before we get to World War I. And this is all based off of this sense of nationalism. Okay, so this emerges really right after Napoleon's rise to power, and throughout these wars and even afterwards, which is going to pit the world, Europe specifically, in these bitter, bitter rivalries. All right, so we will talk about these other terms here as we go through the presentation. All right, so I think we left off on the slide, what was it? The Continental System? We did talk about that?
They're not national.
This one?
Yeah, that's the last.
Okay, all right, no problem then. So last thing here I want to talk over. So I'm going to go through this pretty quick so we can get through this and I can get your study guide out and we can hit the timeline like I was talking with the test on Tuesday. So Napoleon's three big mistakes. Continental System, what was that again? What was the Continental System? Connor, go ahead.
Basically stopping Russia's land trade.
Yeah, good job. Good job. So this was an idea where Napoleon thought the best way to try to hit Great Britain is to target their economy, target their trade with these other European countries. And if you can stop that trade of resources and materials, this is going to cripple their economy and their military, right? They won't be able to afford these costly wars that are happening all throughout Europe. And Napoleon can maybe get them one up. So ultimately, this was a big mistake just because Great Britain has the largest navy in the world, right? It's going to be almost impossible to try to blockade Great Britain and obviously the rest of Europe. Okay, to try to enforce a lot of these trade requirements, it's going to take up a lot of resources and manpower. So with Spain especially and Russia, they're not going to fall into this continental system. And that's going to push Napoleon into leading a two-front war and a conflict with these two powers that's going to really drain his resources, his men, and when it comes to Russia, especially, right, he tries to invade this territory, this land where the weather's going to heavily impact him. All right, 2, the Peninsular War. So this is something to note. Okay, after the continental system's broken, Spain decides, well, we need the resources and materials coming in from Great Britain, right? We're dependent on these types of materials. And you can only imagine, right, in your marketplace, if, or let's say, people are buying these groceries or buying these items, these materials, and all of a sudden it's gone. Well, for the limited supply you have, the prices are going to skyrocket. It's going to cause a lot of internal struggles when it comes to purchasing items for the citizens. So rather than starting a revolution within your own country like Spain, right, they decided, well, we'll just continue to trade with Great Britain. So with Napoleon, with France, right, they saw this as a threat. They saw this as, wow, you're not following along with the continental system. And this leads to a strong and a long-lasting war with Spain and France. Okay, so with France, one thing to note is that they are your traditional fighting, right, lining up and utilizing these new techniques on the battlefield. Spain is going to use guerrilla warfare. So what is guerrilla warfare? What does that mean? Guerrilla warfare. Paul, go ahead. Yeah, good job. So you have a small band of fighters. They're utilizing the terrain, utilizing their environment to their advantage, and targeting these more traditional styles of fighting. And this could really weaken an army, especially moving and fighting in 2 different areas, 2 different environments, like France will in Spain and in Russia. So this Peninsular War causes a huge downfall for France because, well, okay, they're splitting up their army. Materials and resources are going to 2 different locations, okay, and really trying to protect all of Europe from this for the continental system. And it causes a huge decline of their forces. And then finally, the invasion of Russia. So again, with Napoleon, he's fighting all throughout Europe. His troops are, you can imagine, pretty tired, right? And the resources are limited. Okay, with Russia, he marches through Russia, no problem. Why? Because his technique strategies are a little bit more sophisticated than a lot of these other countries within Europe. But with one thing with Russia on their side is the environment. Okay, they didn't have developed roads or passages like what we see in mainland Europe, in France. So when it comes to just traveling, it's difficult to do. Right? One thing to note with Russia too is their environment, their weather conditions are brutal. Right? In some locations, some areas in Russia, it gets to negative 20 degrees. Okay, a lot of snow. And when you're trying to mobilize an army and maneuver these armies through this terrain, it's going to be difficult. You think so, right? You think so. So we already talked about the continental system. Okay, again, this is France's way, this naval blockade to try to take out Great Britain's resources, materials, and trade. The best way to try to hit your opposition is to cut off its resources. And a lot of it, too, with its trade with the other European countries. We all know that Spain and Russia will not go and follow along with this continental system, which will prompt Napoleon to try to attack these 2 forces. But overall, it was a great idea. It was an idea to try to hit Great Britain where it really counted, with its money, right, with its purse. And the idea, again, was to try to drain its resources, its materials through this trade. And eventually, hopefully, that Great Britain will just fall out of these wars because they just can't afford it anymore. Okay. For so long, these European countries and the rest of the world really were dependent on trade with Great Britain. So if you just cut that out, well, that's going to really hit hard when it comes to trying to mobilize an army. So that's what the continental system was. Again, it's seen as a downfall because France really didn't have the naval power like Great Britain. And these other countries found ways to try to get these resources into their marketplaces and avoid this blockade. So it caused a lot of harm to Napoleon's idea with this continental system and with France's power and control over Europe. So eventually, right, this is going to fall, right? Eventually, this is going to fall apart. A great idea up front, but in all reality, it was unrealistic. All right, so like I said, the next thing, the Peninsular War. So as Spain decided to forget about this continental system, go against France's orders to try to avoid trade with Great Britain, well, this will lead France into try to really bully Spain back into this continental system. So Napoleon sends a bunch of troops down into Spain, to try to inflict their order on them. One thing to note with Spain is that they had non-traditional methods when it came to warfare. And when you're traveling to a different territory, a different land, you don't know the terrain as well as the people that inhabit that land. So when it comes to guerrilla warfare, okay, these forces, these small band of forces are striking in ways that are very non-traditional. Okay, they're fast paced, and it's to a point where kind of catching your enemy with their pants around their ankles, so to speak. So with that, guerrilla warfare, it's a type of warfare, a new method of warfare at this time, really, that is non-traditional. Okay, they're using the environment to attack these larger forces, these larger offensive forces into really submission. And it's going to cause France to lose a lot of resources, materials, men, and just be a really thorn in the side for France as they're trying to accomplish this continental system. So this Peninsular War, it took over 6 years. So you can imagine a war dragging on for 6 years. And again, with this non-traditional fighting, it just took a lot out of the motivation of the troops of France.
Spain just denied you nothing their revolution.
Yeah, eventually. All right, and then finally, guys, the invasion of Russia. So with Russia, okay, you can imagine Napoleon, the French troops, they're fighting literally all over Europe. They're exhausting a lot of materials, a lot of troops all over Europe to try to, really fortify this continental system, to fortify this blockade of materials and resources coming in from Great Britain. And at the same time, they're fighting against Spain, which is at the total other end of Europe, right? So we'll note about these countries when we get close to World War I. Okay, you'll have to pick out on the map where these countries are. I just figured that right now with all these kingdoms and all these different empires in Europe, it might be a little difficult to do. So when we get closer to World War I, you guys will have to map out where these countries are. But with Spain, like I mentioned already, with this Peninsular War, they're fighting here. Now they're fighting all the way out here in Russia. Okay, so as you can imagine, this is setting up a two-front war. This is setting up a conflict for Napoleon, where he has resources, materials, troops all over Europe. Okay, you can't really fortify one area. You can't really send your full might all at once because you're trying to occupy a huge chunk of land. So with that, Russia, well, I don't know if it's smart, but in any case, this was their last-ditch effort to try to deter this opposition, this offensive force. So it's called the Scorched Earth policy, where the Russian troops literally destroyed their resources when it comes to food, when it comes to their farm fields. They destroyed a lot of their homes and buildings all throughout these cities where France was marching into to try to deter France away. We all know, okay, with these very harsh winters that hit Russia, it's going to cause a huge blockade, a huge blunder for France as they're marching into these areas where, like I said, it gets to 20 degrees below zero, or maybe even 30 degrees below zero in some locations. So these troops are literally freezing. They're starving to death because there's no food. Okay, they have no shelter. Why? Because the Russians literally destroyed their own buildings. They destroyed their own farm fields. They destroyed their own food supplies. And that's what it means by scorched earth. So this is your last-ditch effort to try to deter an enemy away by literally destroying everything you have. So Napoleon does reach Moscow, okay, which we'll talk is going to be the capital here eventually when we get to World War I and World War II. Okay, and as they reach Moscow, it's already burning up. It's already destroyed. And Napoleon's like, wow, it's already destroyed. How did this happen? Well, the Russians did it themselves to try to push France away from continuing to invade into Russia. All right, so with Russia, they just make up makeshift cities, just literally move their cities back. It's like that one SpongeBob episode. Oh, just move the city away. Yeah. Well, the Alaskan bullworm. Oh, too young for that? Jeez. Oh, man. There goes that reference. All right. So as you can see here at the bottom, 590,000 to 600,000 French troops starve or freeze to death. And this puts France, Napoleon into defeat. And with that, Napoleon is defeated. He is defeated. For now. So as he's defeated, he's exiled to Elba, which is a small island off the coast of Italy. So very close to Corsica, where he was from. Right? So as he loses this conflict against Russia because, well, all of his troops kind of freeze to death, they starve to death, well, he's exiled to Elba, which is a small island off the coast of Italy. Like I said, it's very close to where he grew up, where he was born, right here close to Corsica. All right, that's not far away though, right? So eventually he'll lead a small army and retake back France. And everybody just grants him with wide open arms. Like, yeah, we want Napoleon back. We want to bring our power back to France. Okay. So within a year, not even, he escapes Elba, his exile, and he leads a small army to take back France. And these wars kick back up again right away. So he was gone for a hot minute, right? Is that how you say it? Yeah, a hot minute. So he's gone for a hot minute, and then he comes back, guns a-blazing, literally, just to continue these wars. One thing to note, though, is do you think the French army, is it strong after losing that conflict to Russia and losing a lot of men? No, right? So his resurrection, so to speak, his comeback isn't near as strong. So eventually he will lose another conflict. Like I said, he'll come back within 100 days, and he will try to repeat and continue this strangulation of Europe. But like I said, the French troops, they were dwindling. They're in low number. They're in low resources. Their motivation to fight was very low. So again, Napoleon, well, it was kind of coming to a close for him. But he was just going to try to continue with these Napoleonic wars as he made his return. All right, so you guys can find that. I just want to make sure we get through this here. And like I said, his last stand here. So his second time around, with his low troops numbers, his low resources and materials, he tries to make a comeback, and it's just not enough. Right. So he is defeated at Waterloo. Okay. So that's Belgium, close to right between where modern day Germany, at the time, Germany's not formed just yet, and in between France. Yeah. So with that, Napoleon is defeated once again. Okay, he's defeated by the Duke of Wellington, which was one of your vocab terms. And Great Britain finally gets the one up, right? Finally. And Napoleon's defeated. So this time, right, for his second exile, which he'll see the last of his days there, they decided, well, let's just put him on an island far, far away that he can never return, that he can never come back. Which they pushed him all the way down here, this small island, kind of see here, St. St. Helena, right down here by Africa, right down here. I guess you'd say it's right between Africa and South America. Right here, this small island. So there's no way he can make it back. Right? There's no way. Just put him at the furthest island away. And that was controlled by Great Britain. There are rumors that they poisoned his food, which he died shortly after he was residing there. And he died of stomach cancer, which many people thought, well, Britain just poisoned his food, right? They decided to just kill him off, which there could be a lot of truth to that. But in his last exile, he wrote a book in his memoirs about his life, about his expansion, right, and his control of Europe, which many people view him as a hero, as a villain. Again, it's one of those things where you just take your opinion with it, right? These wars were very costly, but he was just trying to destroy this old system of the feudal state, right, the feudal system, and destroy this absolute monarchy from Europe. Was he successful? No, but he did bring on a lot of change with these governments, right? Liberties and freedoms and constitutions will be created all throughout Europe after these wars. So yeah, maybe you can say he was successful with these conflicts. But either way, he was a strong emperor, a strong leader that pushed for some just causes and others not so much. All right, so last thing, guys, the Congress of Vienna was formed. And this Congress of Vienna would last about 100 years. This would be somewhat peace between these countries of Europe until we get to World War I. Right, shortly after this, we'll talk a little bit about it. Prussia will unify Germany, which Germany will continue this strong sense of nationalism leading up to World War I. Right, these countries are going to try to continue their expansion overseas, and this imperialistic state will be formed. All right, okay, so I'm going to publish your study guide and the vocab. So turn in your vocab study guide you can work on over the weekend. I'll do that right now. Also, the booklet's up there for you.
Oh,
And the Quizlet.
You got 10 seconds?
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
Very brief. I finished, Robert.
Awesome.
Please.